We're flattered and honored to have you here and proud of these young adults.
What do you do when it's time to celebrate the 10th anniversary of a wonderfully inspired relationship that feeds millions of children all over the world? Why, take all the great church collaborators in this global effort and give them a tour where so much of it begins. Right here, near the beating heart of Salt Lake City, Utah, is the Bishop Central Storehouse, operated by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Just ask the CEO, Baron Seeger of the World Food Program USA, if you can get to him. He's very popular around here.
If I could get on the top of the mountain tomorrow and scream about the good work that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is doing, I would do it. I want you to know that you are our first responders for the World Food Program.
You know, sometimes we wonder how we can be part of a global effort, a global movement, how we can make a difference globally, and it starts right where you are.
Okay, so the tour went great, and everybody got to see what's prepared in a vast way, from powdered milk and canned goods to supplies of every kind stacked to the ceiling. And at the end of the line was the beginning of an afternoon of service to celebrate this 10-year association. 100 students and young single adults coming to make 900 box meals. Scratch that, because more than 200 showed up, and they put out 4,300 boxes. We're going to need a bigger truck. Utah food pantries are counting on it.
I didn't even expect that many to be here. It's crazy, but I can truly feel the love here.
The event even drew the support of President Jeffrey R. Holland and Elder Ulysses Suarez of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles.
This is what organized religion does. It allows us to be good at scale and then to partner with other people who are good at scale. So if you have a desire in your heart and you can be part of something that's much bigger than you, the impact grows.
And sometimes the church has a way of making that great big world out there seem a little smaller. L. Todd Budge of the presiding bishopric ran into one of his former missionaries from Tokyo, and that wasn't on the menu.
It warms my heart to see all these young single adults out here. This is Eli Miller, actually. Yeah, we served together in Tokyo, Japan. He was a fantastic missionary. So it's good to see that he's still serving the Lord.
So you got the word out. That must have been a pretty big job.
It was a lot easier than it sounds, actually. All I had to do was spread it to a couple of people, and the networking there just exploded it.
Even the University of Utah ladies volleyball team were here. A big showing for obvious reasons. They got a great shout and a pretty big reach. And all that excitement paves the way for this. Marking this 10-year anniversary, the church and the World Food Program USA announced a $4.3 million joint contribution, establishing a logistics center in Barbados, the first of its kind, in a region of the world that's no stranger to hurricanes and floods.
It'll make an amazing difference. By helping those people who are in desperate need, in their time of need, it gives them a sense of security.
All in all, this 10-year relationship has so much good to look back on and to forge ahead with.
Through the generosity of the church, we're reaching millions of lives that would not be reached otherwise.
Hi.
It's an amazing sight to look out and see a really full room. So I just want to thank you, knowing how tricky it is to get students to come out to an event like this in the evening, right in the thick of dinner time. We feel grateful. So thank you for your time. And thank you to Sharon and Baron and Ava for a really remarkable, I think, awareness raising and educational time that we were able to spend. So, we are turning now. Rebecca and I's task is to turn inspiration into action. And so the niggling, I believe Sharon called it, that she talked about is what we hope each one of you are able to leave with tonight, that it's an informed niggling. You know exactly what that niggling's asking you to do, and want to make sure that you have plenty in your mind of options to take. So, Rebecca, maybe we can start with just hearing a little bit about your path into your work with World Food Program USA.
Thanks, Jill. And thanks to BYU. I've had the most amazing 2 days on campus, spending time with staff and students, and it's just been inspiring, enlightening, energizing. I've got some more E-words I can throw in there, but just thank you. And it's great to see familiar faces in the audience. I'm sorry, some of you, this will be a little bit of a repeat, but hopefully in a good way. So real quickly, is my mic too close?
Sounds
It's
good to
echoing
me.
a little bit. Okay. I'm inspired by the energy that's in this room. And I will go back a little bit. So it's been a while since I was a college student. Let's just put that out there. But I do have a 19-year-old college student just across the mountains in Boulder. And I asked her for some advice. And she said, Mom, whatever you do, don't try and be too funny. So I'm not going to try and be funny, but I am going to try and relate a little bit to the journey that I've been on, and sort of from when I was sitting in your chair almost 30 years ago as a political science and English major, which some people probably said, wow, you were doubling down on not making any money. I was sort of, what am I going to do? What do I like? What am I motivated by? And I'd always been interested in government and policy and how those laws affect people's lives. And I was fortunate enough to start out my career working for my hometown congressman, sort of like Sharon, that entry-level staff assistant role, which is a little bit challenging because it's not challenging work at all, but you have a great perspective on the office and get to learn issues. And I was there about 5 years. And then I went and started working as a lobbyist. I sort of hired gun, working with Fortune 500 companies, large nonprofits, on helping them figure out how they could meet their business goals, working with Congress and in the levers that Congress had at their disposal around funding and policy. And I really enjoyed that work, and that I learned a lot. I got to spend time with CEOs and learn how they make decisions, learned how to build strategy and then execute on that strategy with tactics to get the job done. But it was a job. It was work. It was separate from what mattered to me and my husband and our children at home. And after a little while, I started saying, how can I use my skills, talents, knowledge, relationship for something that's more meaningful, that has more purpose? You know, you're spending 40, 50, sometimes 60 hours a week at work. And while it was interesting figuring out how to get money for helicopters for the Air Force, it wasn't really filling my soul. And so I had the opportunity when my youngest went to kindergarten to sort of step back and reflect a little bit. And hunger is an issue that had always resonated with me. Thankfully and fortunately, I've never experienced hunger. I grew up in a household where we did always have access to enough nutritious food. But there was a significant event in the mid-'80s. It was a massive famine in Ethiopia in 1983 and 84. And I think for many of us over a certain age, it was definitely a formative event. And I was thinking of what mattered to me, what issues mattered to me. I kept coming back to hunger. And so like most people looking for a job, I went on LinkedIn and I went on Google and I went on, there's a local job search called Brad Travers. And I found this organization called the Alliance to End Hunger. Never heard of them in my life. But I did a little searching and realized I knew somebody that had worked there. And the current head of the organization was actually a member of Congress that I knew from my time on the Hill. He and my old boss were best friends. So I called up my old boss's office and asked to speak to the chief of staff. Didn't tell him what it was about. Could have been a client issue, could have been my dad wasn't getting his retirement check from the government. And I walk in, and before I can open my mouth, Dan says, hey, Rebecca, Tony Hall's looking for someone at the Alliance to End Hunger. Are you interested? And I will share with you all an aspect of this that I don't usually share, but since this is a faith-based audience, I think all of us have times when we look back at things that have happened in our lives and say, oh, yeah, looking back, God was pushing me in this direction at that time, whether it's where you went to school or who you sat next to at lunch and that person became your best friend. This transformation from being a lobbyist to being an anti-hunger advocate was one of those moments where God was right there in real time pushing me in this direction. And I interviewed for the job. I was offered the job on a rainy Friday night, sitting in a Starbucks with Congressman Hall. And he said, don't make a decision now. Take this home, talk about it with your husband, pray about it, and get back to me on Monday. And I'm Catholic, and that weekend, it was during Lent, it was Transfiguration Sunday, and the priest at Mass during the homily said, as you think about the story of transfiguration, think about, is God calling you in your work to use your time, skill, and talent for a greater purpose to help people? And I was going to say yes, but okay, thanks. The bright flashing neon sign really helped. And it's been the greatest decision I think I've made in my professional life. It's allowed me to get to know amazing people, including Baron Seeger, who called me up a little bit over 4 years ago. And at the time, I was the executive director of the Alliance and very busy in the early days of COVID. And Baron said, I'm the new CEO of the World Food Program USA. I have this position open to work on policy and advocacy, and your name keeps coming up. And I said, I can't. I'm too busy. I'm running the Alliance. The world's on fire. Schools are closed, and we need to get food to kids. But then I stepped back and I said, how can I use my skills, talents, time, and relationships to help the most people who need it the most? And it was an easy yes. And that is also one of the best decisions I've ever made. And I'm very grateful to Baron for the opportunity. So that's a little bit of my journey. And I just say that because this job, in fact, this organization did not exist when I was in college. So sitting there today saying, what do I want to do with my life? And what do I want to be doing when I'm on the precipice of 50? That job may not exist right now. So don't feel like you've got to have it all figured out. It can take some time, and sometimes you'll look back and see where you were getting moved in a certain direction. Sometimes it'll be bright, shining, flashing signals saying, go this way.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I think part of what happens in a crowd like this, that is largely students, is that when we get new information, when we feel inspired, the kind of immediate response to that is, what can I do? A career path, and thankfully you've illustrated that career path is not often linear. That's the safe hope we maybe have when we start college, that we'll just be straight to whatever our dreams will be, but it might meander a bit. But it may be a career in social impact. Here at this university, our kind of motto is enter to learn and go forth to serve. So there is, I think, an inclination to want to serve with our careers, and our academic choices leading up to it may take us that way. But at the Ballard Center specifically, we talk about these 3 paths into social impact. One is a career in a social impact organization. Another is to take the lens of social impact and apply that to your major or the career intention you already have. So what does social impact look like as an accountant or as an exercise science major? And the third one is probably the one that the most of us are really going to engage in, and that's being a citizen in a community and being a disciple of Jesus Christ and active in wards and in our communities with those identities. I wonder if, thinking about those 3 paths, you could maybe contextualize what food security and hunger work looks like in those types of instances.
Sure. Thank you. So first of all, question for the students in the audience. I'm going to throw out just some big major groups and raise your hand. Who's studying business? Who's studying government or political affairs or international relations? Engineering? Life sciences? All right. Whoa. There's a path for all of you. That's the great news. And even if did I miss you? Did I not get your major? There's something for you too, no matter what it is. And I think that's one of the really exciting things about hunger work, whether it's global or domestic, is that there's something for everybody. And I talk a lot with students or folks who've recently graduated, reaching out to say, okay, I want to join a nonprofit because I want to help people. And the first thing I say is, it's not the only way to help people. There are lots of things that can happen in the private sector. There are lots of things that can happen through government. And there are, of course, things that can happen through nonprofits. So I think some of it is not feeling like you've got to do it right out of the gate. Some of it's building up skills, sort of like I did on the advocacy side, and then finding ways later in your career to apply them. Some of it is applying them right out the door. I mean, just at World Food Program USA, we have folks who've majored in communications and marketing, business, finance, nonprofit development, English and political science. We have a lot of international relations folks, and most of them end up in the philanthropy team. I'm not sure how that works out, but really there is a path for all of you if you were inclined to go sort of the vocation direction. That second piece, that lens piece, can show up in a couple of different ways. And I think the easiest way is to think about, are there groups that you have an affinity towards that need your skills in a volunteer capacity? So skills-based volunteerism. And this is something I think we'll talk about a little bit later with Just Serve and some of the opportunities that will be coming through there and through our new youth initiative. But how can you use your time outside of work to use some of the skills that you have, whether it's social media or, again, accounting or writing. A lot of small nonprofits in particular are often looking for folks with those skills because they don't have the resources to have those capacity in-house. So that's one example. And then on the active citizenship or civic engagement side of things, I think this is where folks get a little antsy because like, well, I don't want to get political. This isn't political. It doesn't have to be political, but it's really about sharing what matters to you with people who are elected to represent you. And this is what I try and convince everybody I come across in this work is, if you care about global hunger, you have a responsibility to talk with people around you, whether it's your friends, your family, your community, and also your elected officials. You don't have to ask them to take a vote on a bill, but you just have to let them know you care about it and you want them to do it too. And as Barron alluded to, one of the reasons I love working on global hunger issues at the U.S. federal government level is that it is a unifying issue. Members of Congress who don't agree on anything else will come together to work on this issue because they understand the value that it brings from a humanitarian perspective, from a national security perspective, from an agricultural perspective. We send a lot of commodities that are grown in the United States to countries that don't have functioning markets, like Yemen, like Somalia. And that's a really important piece of how we address global hunger as a country. And so I think it's really important to share that story in a genuine, meaningful way, and also to thank your elected officials. If they do something that's moving in this direction, just say thank you. I worked on Capitol Hill for 5 years, and it's amazing how few people say thank you. People will call and tell you did the wrong thing, and you'll get an earful if you're answering the phone, as I'm sure Sharon has experienced too. But so few people say thank you, and it's such a powerful, powerful thing to do to reinforce positive behavior, quite frankly.
I was pretty struck by how Sharon and Barron both alluded to the importance of, local action. And that's where I think sometimes when we're thinking about exercising our responsibilities as a citizen, we are thinking on a level that is really intimidating. Reaching out to our members of Congress, definitely saying thank you to them seems intimidating. But I wonder if there's any more that you'd like to say in regards to engaging sort of that civic engagement, active citizenship on a local level that fits in with the kind of hunger approach to hunger.
Yeah, I think it's really just educating yourself, talking to your neighbors about what's going in the world and the world around you. I think a lot of times people can fall into this trap of it's either global hunger or local hunger, and it's really an and what it looks like and the causes are very different, but it's still folks who don't have access to enough nutritious food on a regular basis, and so that value is important. And so I think just asking questions, educating yourself, and then sharing what you've learned with others, either in conversation, in organizations that you're a part of, or through social media. And I'm going to jump ahead because I can't wait anymore to talk about the Youth Engagement Initiative. It was at the end of my notes, but we're gonna move ahead.
We did have a question about Ben Affleck and
no. We're gonna talk about Taylor Swift. No. So as Barron mentioned, because of the inspiration from a conversation he had with Sharon and the church's interest in engaging youth in these issues, we've been working really diligently over the past, it's probably closer to 6 months, Barron, to be honest, and thinking about what does that look like? What would be exciting, engaging, have value add? And so later this year, we're going to be launching the Zero Hunger Generation. And everybody in this audience will have a chance to be part of the inaugural group of that. We're doing a soft launch today. There will be a QR code at the end of the program, and as you go out, that you can use to sign up for that and get some information. It's a good place right now to learn a little bit, and there's some soft actions you can take as far as following us on social media, signing a petition if you're so inclined. But the big launch is going to be later this year, and really some exciting things. We've just launched for our marketing communications team, a next generation a group of social advocates on social media, and these are folks that have hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of followers, and they're committing to use their platform to engage their networks in learning about global hunger and what they can do to help with it. So there's some really exciting, powerful things coming together all at once, and BYU will obviously be an integral part of it as well. So stand by, but there's something you can do tonight about it. So.
Yeah, it won't be standing by for too long.
Nope, stand by for like 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's the slide that's going to be up as we exit the room, is actually participating in that soft launch, signing up for that. So thanks for jumping ahead. We saw in the opening video just a little bit about the World Food Program school feeding programs. I wonder if you'd talk about that. It's a newer concept to me to be thinking about schools actually as a distribution of food in order to ensure that there is food security, right? And you've talked to me a little bit about how that is a global initiative. I wonder if you'd talk about that just a little bit more.
Yeah, I love WFP's work in school meals because it's something that everybody understands. Everybody in the U.S. understands. We understand school meals because if you've gone to public school, you know that there are free meals that are available to students who are in need for breakfast and lunch. And it's a similar kind of idea. So WFP has worked in school meals for quite some time, and there's a U.S. government program that sort of works as a catalyst in countries. It's called the McGovern-Dole International School Feeding Program. It started in large part from work that the World Food Program USA did about 22 years ago now, in a very bipartisan way to honor Senator McGovern, a Democrat from South Dakota, and Senator Dole, a Republican from Kansas, using the tools, resources, expertise that the World Food Program has to work with governments to set up these programs, which are amazing because in a lot of countries, school isn't free. And so the cost of school, particularly for girls, becomes a burden on families if they're having to make decisions about how to allocate resources. But if there is food provided at the school, it's an incentive. It's one less meal that the household has to provide, and so it's incentive to send the kids to school and keep them in school. And it's really amazing and powerful. And on the McGovern-Dole program, one of the things that I love about it is that part is meant to be temporary. It is meant to be a catalytic investment with the World Food Program and other NGOs working with governments to help the governments see the value that this brings as far as helping their citizens fulfill their potential because they've got full stomachs, they're in a position to learn and go on to be doctors, nurses, accountants, business people. And Kenya is a great example of that. They have completely graduated from any U.S. funding for that. They do have private sector funding, but the government is now working with the World Food Program as a technical advisor to scale school meals to half of the students in the country in the next few years. So it's really exciting. And again, Baron and Sharon talked about the homegrown school meals programs that the World Food Program works, which help both provide work and employment and livelihoods for the adults in the community, but then also nutrition for the kids in the schools. And it's my favorite thing to talk about because the benefit pays off over and over and over again. So thanks for asking about that.
Sure. I wonder, as we wrap this up now, the calls to action, as we started talking, the multiple parties involved in this discussion, the World Food Program USA and the Ballard Center and the church, talking about what our calls to action could be as we have sort of a captive audience, and particularly of young people in transformative parts of their lives. What could we actually kind of extend as the question in your head is sort of what should I do next? So we determined as we started creating multiple lists and multiple entry points for you to participate in actions around food security. We determined that a neat challenge for us to put before you would be that in next month, October 16th, is actually World Food Day. And that gives us essentially a 30-day window to see what could happen just based on the small actions of people who are here in this room listening to what we've talked about tonight. So with that challenge, one action within the next 30 days, I wonder if you can give us a few examples of what students and people who have been here tonight might do.
Yep, absolutely. Before I do that, I just want to mention global hunger is so hard because it's so big. Baron talked a little bit about some of the statistics, the numbers of individuals that are hungry, the number of people that are facing famine in Sudan right now is in the millions. And it gets kind of hard to wrap your head around and say, well, what am I going to do? What's one small action going to do? Trust me, one small action can have a tremendous difference. And don't feel like anything is too small. So I just want to put that out there. And I also think we get a little jaded sometimes and saying, well, this issue's always been out there. There's always been hunger. There will always be hunger. This is just perpetual. Why are we even setting this bold, audacious goal of ending hunger? So I'm going to share a quick story. So I mentioned my daughter, Sarah. She's 19. And when I transitioned to work from being a lobbyist into the anti-hunger space, it meant some changes to my schedule. It meant some changes to sort of the flow of family life. And Sarah and her brother Andrew were, I guess, 8 and 6 at the time. And so Dennis and I sat down and talked to them about this over dinner. And I was tucking Sarah into bed at night. And she said, so Mom, you're gonna go do a job where you're going to work to end hunger. I said, yep, that's right. And she paused a second and she's like, so if you do your job, you're not going to have a job anymore. And I said, wow. Wouldn't that be amazing? And I just share that because we all need to have that hope, that optimism, that perspective of an 8-year-old that this isn't something that's been there forever and can't be tackled. It actually is possible if each of us, whether it's through our vacation, vocation, volunteering, or even just small little individual actions like we're going to talk about in a minute, it really moves the needle and gets us there, and it is possible. So I encourage you all to carry that hope with you that Sharon and Barron talked about and believe that this is possible, and we all do a little bit, and we'll get where we're going. So what can we do? On your way out, you're going to be getting a bar. It's a protein bar with this fabulous wrapper around it. Now, the protein bar, why that's important, part of what the World Food Program does is for kids that are severely malnourished, the World Food Program provides core food like you saw in that video, the rice and the beans, but there are also other nutrients and micronutrients that are needed. And so there's a nutrition bar. It's called different names. You'll probably hear it called Plumpy Nut, but it's ready-to-use supplemental food. And it's provided to infants and children under 5 to help augment those really key building blocks that are needed for them to have a life of thriving, both physically and cognitively. And so we don't have Plumpy Nut. It wouldn't be appropriate for you all to take anyway, but the Ballard Center has procured some protein bars for you to take with you. So if you get a little hungry, if you get that niggling of it's been a while since I've had something to eat, it'll remind you of you can do a little something. And wrapped around it is a paper wrapper with a QR code that will take you to a lovely website that the Ballard Center has designed that has links to Ballard Center, Just Serve, which is an amazing platform to find those real, in-person, hands-on opportunities in your community. And we're also working on some virtual opportunities that we'll build out through the Generation Zero Hunger work that we're doing. And finally, to the World Food Program, USA's website on that Zero Hunger Generation. Sorry, we literally just landed on this name last week. Zero Hunger Generation tools and resources that I mentioned earlier. So you can carry that with you and take an action. I think there are also a couple of other things that you're going to challenge folks to do on their way out the door. But before I turn it back to you, I just want to thank you. This has been amazing. I hope that you've been inspired to do at least a little bit, maybe to do a lot, and look forward to just continuing the connection and conversation with the church and with BYU. Yeah. So what else can folks do?
2 other things that I want to mention, and I will just assert that I feel like we've heard multiple stories tonight of how taking a first step or a small step in faith can be transformative well down the line in regards to your career or your family life or the work that you're doing in your community. So even taking a small step towards an issue that we all care about can also be a small step towards, it's a step in faith and can transform us as we take that step. We shared brief stories about how both of us had responded as really pretty young kids to the call that was going out on very limited media channels to respond to the famine in Ethiopia. For me, that was an experience that absolutely riveted on my mind the power and the reality of fasting. And for Rebecca, that was a step where she delivered to her parents a semi-full, at least, piggy bank. Hopefully it had more than a few coins, but the piggy bank where she said, I want this donated to the World Food Program to take action on that. And here, 20, 25 years later, the work carries on in different form. So take those small steps. So the other two that I just wanted to mention, one is if QR codes aren't your thing, and I know they are, but if they're not, we've got hard copies of a Ballard Center sort of entry point challenge. 5 challenges we're putting out there that if you complete them, then you can get a tote bag. That's one. And the second one is, if you'll help us out, there's been so much effort and energy and sacrifice by those who have organized and attended this event. We're so grateful for our partners at the church and at the World Food Program for coming here tonight. We want to understand the impact of these types of convenings and gatherings and what happened to you as a result of choosing to be here tonight. So in your email within the next 12 to 24 hours, we will send a survey. It's quick, 7 questions. It will be quick for you and it will be transformative for us as we try to really, over the next couple of years, grow this partnership and take action on this social issue. So thank you. With that said, now you're trapped. You're going to walk through the gauntlet of choices to make about what to do tonight and your next 30 days. But again, we thank you so much for being a part of this tonight. It means the world to us. So thank you for all involved.